What's up, everybody? My name is Big Cam and welcome back to another Comically Boston Breakdown episode, where today we are talking about episodes 4, 5, and 6 in the second batch of bundle episodes that Andor has dropped. We have jumped another year and let's get right on into it, shall we? I know the viewership for the first 3 episodes of Andor weren't that great for my channel, so I am going to rush through this a bit quicker. If you would like a deeper, in-depth breakdown because you're somebody that's watching this, comment below. But if not, I'm just going to talk about it for my own mental sanity, just to get it out of my head and just experience Andor with y'all if you would like. But Andor Season 2, Episode 4 was titled Ever Been to Ghorman? And coming off of 4 BBY and what happened in the last 3 episodes, which was a year ago, Cassian Andor was in a TIE Avenger after his plan to steal that went terribly wrong, and the rebels' planning was really bad, but Cassian still found his way out of there, and he went back for Bix and Brasso, but Brasso didn't make it. Krennic has been plotting some plan against the Ghorman Empire, and so things are getting interesting on Ghorman these 3 episodes, and also it's now been 1 year later, and we open 1 year later after Brasso's death, now in 3 BBY, and Bix wakes up in her sleep and is all paranoid, and she's carrying, Cassian's gun, and she walks out into the kitchen and she's pointing a gun at Dr. Gorst. So she's still having these nightmares, and even a year later, about this Dr. Gorst person who tortured her in season 1, and he's like standing in her kitchen and he's torturing somebody else, and it's all in her head, but Cassian has to come and take the gun out of her hand. Like, she's not even just dreaming and waking up from the dream and it's over anymore. Like, she's almost hallucinating that she's like awake and seeing this shit, like, so the poor girl doesn't even want to sleep anymore. Like, she's just tortured inside and out. But so Cassian takes the gun out of her hand, snaps it out of her, and she starts like to cry in his arms, and you're just like, ooh, poor Bix, like, she deserves better than this. We then cut over to Ghorman, and Cyril is combing his hair all like, like a greaser, and Ghorman does look quite interesting. It's like this almost like pentagon shaped, but not really, if you know what I mean, like got the walls around the city type of thing. But Ghorman seems to be this very nice place, but there's like a blockade outside set up by the Empire, and it's making life very difficult for the Ghormans, and they are ready to fight back. They do not want to just sit here and take it any longer. So we see Cyril is kind of a little bit paranoid, and he's leaving his place, and he's actually on Ghorman and in Ghorman, and he's leaving his place and sets up like this emergency tripwire to know if anyone has been coming and going from his place when he's not there. But why is he so paranoid, or is he just that meticulous that he needs to know everything that's going around in his environment? We see that he has gotten a promotion to Ghorman, but his mother thinks that they have put him on the shelf. And she's not wrong, because Dedra and her boss are kind of, working him and working Ghorman and have him on the front lines, but they're kind of doing something in the background, and Cyril can't know the real reason why he's there, and Cyril's kind of just a blind puppy, not really knowing what he's doing. We then see Cassian and Bix go out for shopping, and they're both like, paranoid and don't want to go out. And she's like, listen, both of us are struggling that much. I can't sleep. You can't shop. We're just getting some dinner, like, we got to be able to go to the store and grab food, like, without being so paranoid that everyone knows who we are, like, because they're clearly still on the run, and his face is known, and they're looking for him, and he's like known as Axis, We then see Cyril walking through the town, and a man stops him and gives him a spider, and the spiders are like one of the main scientific resources or whatever on Ghorman. We learned about that in the previous episodes, but we see that they're like chocolate spiders and they have like a candy inside. But this guy gives him a message, and he's like, I'm not a tourist, stop trying to sell me this shit. And he goes, you aren't a tourist, maybe you would like to know more about where you've been staying. And he invites him to come to a meeting. We'll see more about that later. But we then cut back to Bix, and she is struggling that she, killed that guy that was trying to rape her last episode. And Cassian says it had to be done, like, what, you shouldn't be threatened about this. We then see Cyril goes home to see someone has been there and tripped his little tripwire that he left. And then Cassian and Bix, as this is happening, Cassie and Bigg are having an argument over dinner, and Bigg says she can do more, and she seems like haunted from Cassian having to kill a boy that saw Bigg's face. And I don't know if we saw this happen or this happened off screen over the last year, but either way, she's kind of like, you know, fucked up from getting tortured by Gorst, having to kill that guy that almost raped her, and then, you know, clearly seeing a kid die in front of her that Cassian had to kill because he saw Bigg's face. And, you know, Cassian is indeed a murderer, but, you know, he does love Bigg, and Bigg does love him. We then see Cyril goes to his office after hours and has to talk to the guys at the front desk to sneak in. And he goes to a safe room where he has a conversation with Dedra. And he is telling her about the meeting they want to set. And Dedra has an Imperial office meeting, and they are arresting too many prisoners, and their prisons are overcrowded. So the Empire is taking in too many people, and sounds very Empire of them. So what are they going to do? Just start killing inmates or start using them as labor? Either way, poor inmates, you know, a lot of these people probably didn't do anything wrong. The Empire's just tossing them in there. We then see that Dedra wants back on Axis and chasing down Andor, but the new guy says, I don't need your help, you know, I'm capable. And she's like, you've given me a lot to think about. Let me know if you need anything, you know, and she's got transferred off of this Axis project, but she clearly still wants to be hunting down Andor. It's more personal. We then see Mon Mothma hard at work getting voters to vote against the Emperor, but it's not quite going the way she would like. The Empire and the Emperor has gotten too strong in the Senate, and we're getting to the point where, you know, he's flipped the Senate and they're becoming a galactic empire, and they're not just a republic anymore. We then see Lonnie, who is one of the Imperial officers that was in the meeting, who was an Imperial officer last season as well. I had just forgotten about him, and definitely forgotten about his name. But Lonnie, one of these Imperial officers, that is a spy for the rebels. He goes to talk to Luthen, and this is the guy that Luthen says that great line to last season. What have I given to this rebellion? Everything! You know, like that moment is talking to this guy Lonnie, and Lonnie informs Luthen that Dedra has been working Ghorman, and he hasn't had information for Luthen for months, but this is the first information that he's had that's been worth calling about in Dedra is working Ghorman. And Cyril goes to the meeting that the Ghorman people have set, you know, gave him the meeting location for, and the Ghorman people are not happy with the Empire, and the rumors that they are building a armory in the center of town that would block their memorial, which is against the Empire charter rules that they had like passed. But why would the Empire be building a armory in the middle of town? We then see Bigg is not able to sleep, but she sees Cassian's signal light going off in the tower in the distance, and he goes to meet Luthen, and Luthen asks him, ever been to Ghorman, which is the title of the episode, and so Cassian has to go to Ghorman to do a job for Luthen. He's like, I didn't say yes, but it's pretty much, you know, you're going. We then cut over to Dakar, where Willem is showing Saw Gerrera like a bomb, is what I thought it was first, but it's actually a device that opens up like a valve. So it's almost like a giant device they hook on to this thing to like unlock it, pretty much. You know, like it's a giant locksmith, is how I interpreted it. But Saw is a little bit tapped and crazy. Saw makes Willem, or Willmun, I called him Wilson last episode, Willmun is his name, and Saw makes teach his other guy, Pluty, and it seems like this guy, you know, is going to be more hostage to Saw than a worker or a partner, you know what I mean? And it seems like Luthen sent Willman here to help Saw, and now Saw's like, this guy's my guy, you know, you're not getting him back type of thing. And yeah, so he's kind of hostage here, but Saw's a madman, so you don't necessarily want to spit in his eye, if you know what I mean. But to end this episode, we cut back to Bigg and Cassian, and they do this like hand dance and this like, you know, kiss on the hand, and Cassian leaves for Ghorman and leaving Bigg alone. And I was like, uh-oh, is this going to be their last dance? And she's like doing drugs to sleep, and just as she like closes her eyes, the credits close on episode 4, and we head into episode 5 titled I Have Friends Everywhere. And this is now Cassian is on his way to Ghorman, and Bix is alone. Cyril also in Ghorman, so that's definitely going to end poorly. I thought for sure they were going to see each other or something, but apparently not. But we open on Luthen telling his assistant that our friend, meaning Cassian, is on his way to Ghorman, and then we cut to Cassian meeting his connection and speaking in code, and he says, I have friends everywhere, and that's like the title of the episode, but also like the spy code that they're using to talk in code, and they give him a bag with his supplies and his new identity, where he becomes a, you know, he's pretty much like a spy, a Star Wars spy. He's like Star Wars James Bond, you know, like that's what Cassian kind of reminds me of. And I love when Cassian gets like this, you know, he gets into the spy mojo, you know, he's not just this rebel arguing with the other rebel guy, you know, like when he's fully, you know, on a mission. I love when Cassian's focused, you know, like he's a badass and he's willing to do whatever he needs. Cyril is on the phone with his mother and tells her he will be home soon when ISB, which I believe is Imperial Security Bureau, kind of like the FBI type of thing of Star Wars, but the ISB, or maybe like Internal Affairs of Star Wars, the ISB comes in and they start sweeping the room and take him into custody, and Cyril's pissed because there's a bug in his office and he didn't know. Or maybe he did and he was the one that planted it for Dedra, or maybe Dedra planted it, or maybe the Ghorman rebels planted it, I don't know. But, you know, there was a bug in his office. We then see that Cassian's cover is he's a fashion designer, and you're like, ooh, I kind of like this for Cassian, he's handsome. But Cyril goes to talk to the Ghorman people that asked him for his help, and they think that the ISB is running a shadow government behind the Emperor's back, and they are interested in transports that don't have a bill of landing. So, you know, they're going to try and steal this transport, and Cyril's like, should I help him? Sure, maybe I will. But they're not right. They're like, oh, the ISB is running everything from the shadows behind the Empire. The Emperor's back. The Emperor is the one doing it behind your backs, but it's alright. You guys don't know that, but we do, you know. Luthen then goes and checks on Bix, and Cassian's not going to be happy about this, but Bix says she isn't as strong as Luthen, or maybe Luthen isn't as strong as she thinks. But he stayed in this safe house for a while. He's like, oh, I stayed here for 2 nights in a while back. He goes, it's pretty dull, isn't it? You don't like it here. And so she kind of like spruces up the place afterwards. She's like, he called my place dull. But they are staying in this like safe house that he clearly has set up for them. And he sees that she's been taking drugs, and she's like, it's just for sleep. And Luthen says, it works for a while, until when you stop, the dreams come back worse than before. Be careful. And she says, you need me healthy. So maybe she's going to get off the drugs, but she definitely, the poor thing, needs some sleep. And she kind of wants to go to work, but Luthen asks her to go to work, and she kind of says, no, I need to rest up and be healthy type of thing. He wanted to pretty much get her on a mission while Cassian's on a mission, and have them both individually being rebels, where they work better as a team. They really do. And Cassian can't function when Bix is, you know, not doing well. He, you know, all he's thinking about is her. We then see Cyril gives the Ghorman rebels the information that they wanted, and Cassian is checking into his hotel, and he asks the guy about the monument in the center of town. And we hear that it is when Grand Moff Tarkin massacred a bunch of the Ghorman people just so that he could land his ship. Right? So they were all like in his landing zone. He's like, move out of the way, I'm trying to land. And they're like, no, screw you, you're not allowed to land. And he pretty much just mowed them all down, like hundreds of them. I think it was something like 500, they said. Just mowed down so that he could land his ship, which is very Moff Tarkin. If you guys don't know who Grand Moff Tarkin is, he is one of the Imperial guys who's like one of the bigger guys in Rogue One, where the guy's already been dead, but like they CGI'd his face to be in the movie. But he's most known for Star Wars 97, you know, 77, the original, A New Hope Star Wars. We then see Cyril goes to see Dedra, and she had him followed, so she knows how safe he was. And he's like, you had me followed? And she's like, you only have an hour, turn out the lights. And he's like, you really had me followed? And she goes, turn out the lights. So what, they kiss or something in the dark, or they just fuck here? I don't know what they're gonna do, but they don't show anything. They just show the lights turn off. He like kind of walks back over to her, and then they cut, and it's like, wait, did they kiss? Did they do anything in the dark? In my mind, they fucked. Good for him. He's getting some Dedra nookie, and Dedra's getting some Cyril dick. Like, oh, like such a gross couple. Cassian then goes to talk to the Ghorman rebel's daughter, and he's like sitting at this restaurant. She comes up, and they start to talk into code and shit, and it turns from, I'm just a designer, to, you have no idea who I am, and you need to be more careful, and I can't wait to meet your father for fabrics, and get the guys you have following me off your back. So he's like talking in code, but he also knows so much more than they do, and he's clearly much more vigilant than they are. And these Ghorman, like, they want to fight back, and they want to join this rebellion and empire, you know, fight against the empire type of thing, but they're young. They don't have any rebel experience. They don't have any fighting back experience. They're just naive, you know? We then see Cyril goes to have dinner with his mother at her house like last season, and he's like drinking blue milk cereal, and she's so annoying, and oh god, he just, you know, he hates his life, but he will do anything for his mother. We then see Bix is just barely staying awake, and she's trying to sleep on the floor, you know, brought her mattress out to the floor in the living room, and she's right next to the TV, holding a pistol, you know, and she's not doing well. We then see Cassian goes to meet Caro Rylance, who is the head of the Ghorman rebels, and whose daughter he just met, you know, a second ago. They want him to steal a military transport, but that's information coming from Cyril. So, you know, is Cyril playing them? You know, like, Cyril gave the rebels the information about the transport that they're gonna steal. And now they're going to Cassian. So Cyril and Cassian's information are so close to each other that it's like, it's gotta piss off Cyril to his core, even though he didn't know Cassian was here. But like, you know, this was the guy he was hunting down, who got the better of him, you know, like, man. Cyril then tells Dedra's ISB bots, Poltergaz, and I really like Poltergaz, actually, and Dedra's boss is like, excellent work, Cyril, you know, and Cyril's, you know, set up this whole plan with Dedra on Ghorman to, you know, play these rebels type of thing, and see what the people on the ground of Ghorman are like. But Cyril's doing what he's told by Dedra type of thing, but he doesn't know what he's actually doing. We don't even really know what he's actually doing there. Like, what do they actually need on Ghorman? And maybe it's just the, you know, resources that and materials that Krennic was talking about last 3 episodes. But as Poltergaz is like, excellent work, Cyril. Cyril looks at Dedra and is like, if I say this is the greatest day of my life, would that spoil everything? And Dedra kind of like, you know, swallows her disgust and just goes, it's good to see you happy. And both of them are like not happy, but like, this is the happiest they've ever been. You know, it's like, oof, oh, ISB, terrible. We then see Willman is teaching Saw's guy, and he's trying to keep Willman around, but Saw's ready to kill him off, you know, he's seen too much, he says. So it's like, oh my god, poor Willman's just gonna have to teach this guy, Pluty, how to build this thing, and then he's just gonna kill him off, like, goddamn. Luthen, we then cut over to, and he is blaming his assistant for the bug, and there's like a listening device that they planted in some guy's collection, art collection, for information, and now the guy is gonna have the whole collection vetted, so they like need to get in there and get the bug out of there, and Luthen's like blaming her for this. He's like, that will lead back to us, we need to get it out of there, and she's like, we need to take it out at the party, and he's like, what if we can't? And she's like, then we should be prepared. And ooh, like, just the little like code talks in this show are so good. But we then cut to Saw coming to Willman, and Saw goes to shoot, like, you know, has the gun on his face and shoots the Pluty guy and calls him a traitor. And you're like, oh my god, the guy was transferring information to the Empire, and Willman just barely is alive, but Willman is now Saw's new engineer, and Saw's like, it's on you now, boy. And, you know, poor Willman did not want to end up on Saw Gerrera's empire, you know, like, but here he is. or, army. Cassian had been checking out the town, and the rebels had been showing them their plan and how they were going to execute it. And Cassian tells Caro that their people alone won't get away with stealing the shipment, and that he's, not on board type of thing. He thinks they're too naive, they're too new, that they need him, and, he's not really presenting any ideas. And Caro stands up and goes, "Not much of a revolutionary, are you?" And he kind of goes, "Apparently not." And then he goes, "Tell your friend I'm not impressed." So, he wanted Cassian's help, and Cassian is pretty much telling him, like, this is a terrible idea, don't do this. And, it's not what the guy wanted to hear. So he's pissed that Luthen sent this. This is the rebel you sent to fight in the rebellion? Well, what the fuck? But Cassian doesn't want to do this because he's like, I'm going to get involved with the Empire again. This is dangerous. And all he's thinking about is Biggs. We then cut to Wilman while he places the device on this rhydonium valve that they're trying to open. And Saw is like, talking to himself, he's all crazy. And then, he opens the valve and he goes, "You think I'm crazy? Yeah, I am. Revolution is not for the sane." And, so he's been breathing in this rhydonium for so long. So Saw is really just high as shit. But he says to Wilman, "What are you, boy? You're not with Luthen right now. You're right here with me, ready to fight." And Wilman takes off his mask and starts to breathe in the rhydonium and kind of buys into being on Saw Gerrera's team. But it also looks like the rhydonium is making him like crazy high, or like, like meth or something, like really fucking him up. And, maybe changing his mind and his state forever type of thing. But the credits roll in episode 5 when this is happening, and holy shit, Saw's just a high nutcase. I thought he was like this general, like, yeah, I always thought he was a little crazy, but I didn't realize he was just getting high this whole time on rhydonium. But we cut over to episode 6, What a Festive Evening, which is going to be the party that we've been hearing about the last 2 episodes, where they got to get that listening device out of that guy's art collection. But we open episode 6 with Cassian getting on Luthen's ship, and they are going to Coruscant. And is that where Bix and Cassian are staying? I don't think so, but maybe Luthen drops them off on his way. But Luthen laughs when he sees Cassian's disguise in him acting as a spy, and asks his assessment of Ghorman, and he fills him in on their dumb idea. And Luthen tells him he's thinking like a thief, and Cassian's like, "I'm thinking like a soldier." And Luthen goes, "Well, you need to think like a leader. What do you think a Ghorman rebellion front would do for this rebellion? Like, that's a huge piece to this cause. And the cause is the rebellion. Like, we're not doing this for selfish desires. Like, we're doing this for the cause." And, he's still like, this is a dumb idea. And Luthen, thought Andor could have been the help for Ghorman, but he sent another spy, and the other girl that is like his partner that we saw help rob a garrison in season 1 with Cassian, and Cinta is like her girlfriend or lover or something like that. This whole time I was like, what is this girl's name? And I just couldn't find it. We then see Cassian goes back home to Bix and tells her about his spy cover being a fashion designer, and she would be into this guy. And Bix tells him that Luthen came by to see her, and Cassian's all freaked out, like, why would he do that? He doesn't do anything without, doing it on purpose, and he's like all mad. And he's like, I was with him today. Why wouldn't he tell me he went to see you? He's doing this on purpose to get into my head. He's not wrong. Luthen never does anything without a reason. And Bix says, maybe he wants us to waste time talking about it. And Cassian's like, hugs her, like, yeah, maybe you're right. But Cassian clearly is pissed and goes to see Luthen at his shop. And Luthen is not happy that Cassian's here. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing here? Do you realize what you're risking coming here? And Luthen's like, this is the second time today that you've disappointed me. And he goes, you knew Bix and I would talk about this. And he goes, I thought it would be more interesting if she didn't tell you. Now you've both disappointed me. And I was like, oh, what a good line by Stellan Skarsgård. But Luthen says to Cassian, soft on Gorham, but willing to protect Bix at any cost. And, you need to get your priorities straight. And he says, Bix has to pull it together, or you have to decide when it's too large a problem. And Cassian says, you want my blood? Help me work this out. And Luthen says, thanks for coming by this way. And he laughs and leaves. And pretty much gives him a cover story to leave. And it's just like, listen, you knew you shouldn't be here, but here's your cover story, leave. Thank you for dropping off this medallion that is a fake cover story. So Cassian has to fix this Biggs problem and get Biggs back in the game, which I thought meant maybe he would have to kill Biggs, but by the end of this episode, you actually get a better version for Biggs. We then cut over to Lonnie talking to Partagaz and the ISB guys, and he tells him that Dr. Gorst is setting up his own program and not just operating as this one crazy guy, you know, torturing people. Now he's going to have this whole Empire wing torturing people in his own program, which, oh boy, screw Dr. Gorst. But we then see Cinta and the other spy girl both, you know, took this job to see each other. And, you know, they've been separated by Luthen to be individual rebels, but they work better together as rebels together. Cinta and this girl then go to talk to the Ghorman rebels and make it real clear that they are in charge of this rebel mission and that they are not ready and that they need to follow orders. And of course, one of them is too dumb to fucking realize the orders that are in front of him and how serious and easy they are, and he couldn't follow them. So a terrible mistake gets made later this episode, but we'll talk about that then. But we then see Biggs is taking drugs still, and she's staring out the window, and the signal for Cassian is blinking again, and she says, whatever the mission is, I'm going with you. And she's tired of being cooped up in this place. You can just tell, like, she just needs to get out. But apparently this mission is maybe what Luthen brought to Cassian to, you know, handle this problem. Help me fix this problem. You want my blood? Help me fix this problem. Cinta and the other spy girl, they are going to talk to Luthen about him separating them, and then they kiss, and they kind of have this moment of like, we're not going to be separated anymore after this rebel, you know, this assignment, this mission. We're going to be together forever, and they kiss, and they kind of like, you know, it's maybe fuck, who knows, but they both share a moment here, and it's beautiful. It's like, oh, I love these two girls together. We then cut to Mon at the Senate hearing that the Republic is now the Empire assembled, and she's not happy that she was trying to get these votes and none of it worked her way, and she's very pissed. But we then see Luthen and his assistant are going to the party. We see a young Senator Organa.
Senator Organa.
Perrin.
Bale, how are you?
I'm free. That was my last investiture party of the season.
Oh, don't tell me you've left poor Breyer up there all alone.
No, we had to split up to cover the rounds. I drew Sculdin.
Yes, we almost did that, but...
Not tonight.
No, you're family now. You're in for the show. Good luck with it.
He warns them good luck and sends them in, but I just thought it was interesting that we get to see a younger Organa in the Senate. Maybe the other actor was too busy, or maybe they just really wanted that younger, skinnier look. I don't know. But oh no, so the rebels are about to steal this shipment, but it's all a setup, and Cyril is watching them and on comms with Dedra and her boss Partagaz as this is all happening. And we then see that Lonnie and the other ISB officers are at the same party as Luthen, and Luthen goes to talk to Mon, and she takes him into Skulderon's collection as her +1, and they go into this collection room to see that Krennic is there as well, and this is like, oh boy, this crazy meeting and this crazy party where Luthen's got to get this listening device out of this room, and the head of the Empire, almost, the Krennic, is there, like very powerful figure in the Empire. You know, he's one of the guys building the Death Star type of thing, like, oh boy. But as this is happening, we see the party and the shipment getting attacked by the rebels at the same time. So the rebels take down this carrier, and Cyril is seeing it all. And then we see Luthen's assistant is using Lonnie to block her view from the other guests in the room so that she can remove the listening device, but it's stuck. Oh boy. And then tension starts to build as they are unloading this carrier, and she's on a time crunch to remove this listening device. And you're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, what's gonna happen? Remove the device, steal the stuff, remove the device, steal the stuff. You know, like, you're just going back and forth like, oh my god, there's too much tension, it's making me nervous. But the whole time, Krennic and Mon are kind of having this meeting of the minds and kind of like this battle of wits back and forth. And then the listening device is so stuck that she's pulling with all her might, and her hand is starting to bleed trying to get it out. And then we cut back over to the rebels, and the moron son of the Caro Rylans, the Ghorman rebels kid, is a punk, and he's talking to one of these guys that was in the meeting earlier, and this, guy's like, what's going on over here? And he goes, listen, go home. And he pulls a blaster on him, and Cinta and the other girl told him that only those two were supposed to have blasters because they've wielded them before. And this loser pulls out a blaster thinking like he's big and tough with it, and the guy is like, you pointing that at me? It better be fucking real, because if it's not, I'm gonna shove it down your throat. And he's like, come on, man, just please get out of here. And the guy goes for his gun and grabs him, and a blaster shot goes off, and it goes off in a stray direction and kills Cinta. Oh man. This was devastating. I was like so sad to see Cinta all of a sudden dead, and the other girl is just sitting there devastated, and they're like, we have to go, we have to go, we have to go. And everything goes wrong, and nothing in a rebel fight can go right. Everything has to go wrong. And the fucking punk that shot Cinta's body is like crying, and she's like, are you fucking serious? You're fucking crying? And the guy that, was fighting the kid for the pistol carries Cinta's body down the hall and onto the ship. And it's like, oh, the girl is so devastated that her love, Cinta, has now been killed. But the rebels get away, but the punk that's crying, and the girl's so pissed. And she's like, Cinta was a warrior, and everything you have ever daydreamed about. She was a miracle. And to die like this because of you, you foolish, whimpering child, you will make up for this forever. And this kid's just like, crying, can barely look at her, and she's just giving him the fucking business. Like, you fucking are here and she's dead. You should be fucking dead, you piece of shit, you punk motherfucker. Like, she's letting him have it. Good. This kid's a punk and he's a bitch, and I don't like him. We then see Luthen's assistant did get the bug out after all, and Luthen's like, we should have killed Krennic when we were in there, which is just a funny ass line that I loved. And then he's like, I've been smiling so hard my face hurts. And then he brings up this line, we should have killed Krennic when we were in there, while we were up there. And she kind of chuckles and goes, now you're getting it. We then cut over to the end of this episode, where we see Dr. Gorst is going to his office, and Bix is waiting for him in the shadows and puts him into his chair, and puts a bomb on the back of his seat and ties him up and puts the listening device over his ears and a muzzle over his mouth so he can't scream and nobody can hear his screams. And she tortures him the same way he tortured her, and she walks away and shoots a guard on her way out. And we also see that Cassian is there as well. So this blinking light was a mission that Cassian and Bix were about to go on, and they were about to go take care of Dr. fucking Gorst. And as they're walking out, we see Cassian, he hits a button and a bomb goes off. So the bomb that was on the back of his chair. So he goes out getting tortured and gets bombed to death. And this is where the credits roll on episode 6, heading us into the next year, in the next bundle of episodes. So this has been now what the events of 3 BBY were. And hopefully Bix's bad dreams about Gorst will now be over, and she'll be able to move on now that Gorst is dead and won't be able to torture her again. But in the last episode, 4 BBY, we lost Brasso. In 3 BBY, we lost Cinta. So maybe in 2 BBY, we lose somebody else in this time jump. Oh, God. But next week, episodes 7, 8, and 9 will be 2 BBY. And we'll get another time jump and more chaos and craziness as this season goes on. But maybe Bix and Cassian get into the fight together next week. And kind of like Cinta and that girl wanted to do, maybe Cassian and Bix finally get to fight together rather than being separated or Bix not doing well. So maybe Bix will be back to healthy next episode. But Bix isn't in Rogue One, so I have a feeling Bix's future might not be so permanent, and that scares me. But Luthen narrowly dodges getting discovered with that bug, and the rebels get away with that shipment, but of what and why did the Empire let them steal that? Poltergaz and Cyril were there. They let them steal that stuff. They could have called the cops sooner, but they let it happen type of thing. So why? Why did they let that happen? Maybe we'll find out next episode. And poor Wilmans with Saw, and oof, I love this show. It gets juicy, the drama, but comment below your thoughts on Andor if you liked season 1, if you're liking season 2. I know there's not many of you watching this, but if you came by and checked out this video, it means a lot to me. I really appreciate you guys. My name is Big Cam. If you'd like to follow my other social medias, links down in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please like this video, commenting below, hitting that bell so you don't miss future videos, and subscribing are the best way to do that. Thank you guys so much for coming on by. Once again, my name is Big Cam, and I will see you beautiful people in the next one. Peace.